You'd think that a manufacturer with a reputation for bold moves like Citroen would have loads of electric vehicles already, but this is actually the first one the company's produced in this particular segment. It sits, as do many electric vehicles, somewhere between an SUV and a hatchback, but has a typical Citroen look. Let's find out if its originality is more than skin deep. But before that, if you enjoy this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's certainly not a bad looking car. The stance is high, as we usually see for an EV, but the exterior is more curvy than some. The sloping rear will reduce boot space. Sitting in the so-called C segment, it's a medium-sized car, not as big as the C4 Picasso, and with a striking resemblance to the C4 Cactus, but more curvy and better looking. This car has some of the urban crossover elements of the C4 Cactus, but with a much more mature combination of these with the regular car aspects. It's worth noting that although the e-C4 uses an EV-capable platform called CMP, this isn't exclusively for EVs, so it arrives alongside other C4s with the same body and fossil fuel drivetrains. You will also recognise this drivetrain. It's basically the same one in virtually every EV from the PSA group, or Stellantis as it is now called. So inside the e-C4 is a 50 kWh battery and 134 horsepower motor. This is the same one as the Vauxhall Corsa E, the Peugeot E208 and E2008, and even some vans. The e-C4 is probably closest to the Peugeot E2008, but it's smaller. This is a good size for general city use, but also has a bit more for other types of activity. There are 3 trim levels available: Sense Plus, Shine and Shine Plus. You pay £950 extra for Shine and £1,200 more on top of that for Shine Plus. All cars have 18-inch diamond cut alloys, LED headlights, rear parking camera and sensors, sat-nav, and a full complement of safety features, which we'll talk about shortly. The mirrors are folding and you even get a head-up display. The Shine adds dark tinted rear windows and some chrome, extra safety features, automatic headlights and front parking sensors. Shine Plus adds black leather, heated front seats, a rear armrest, a more elaborate hi-fi, wireless smartphone charging and rear USB. There are 7 colour choices, with white the basic option, grey, black, brown, light blue and platinum grey metallic like we have here. All cost £545, but red metallic is £700. Park Assist is £350 extra. There are 5 colour packs, some of which don't cost anything extra and some of which are £150. 11 kilowatt 3-phase AC is £300 more, and you can also add a glazed sunroof for £800. You can also get a built-in dash cam for £300 and Citroen's SmartPad system for £100. We'll talk about that in a bit. All electric C4s have keyless entry, so let's have a look inside. You don't get any choices for interior. Whatever trim you choose is black, but for the Sense Plus and Shine, the material is synthetic, and for the Shine Plus, it's leather. You get a heated steering wheel on Shine and above. It's worth noting that none of the seats are completely electronically adjustable. They're all mechanical, which is maybe one drawback of this car over some competitors. However, they are heated in this model. You really do get quite a lot of headroom, so tall people have no problems with this car. The seats are quite comfortable too. So you get a reasonable amount of storage in the centre. You get this little cubby here underneath the armrest. Then in front of that you get, under a sliding door, you get a couple of cup holders. Then you get a smaller cubby at the front here with a 12 volt power adapter, and then here finally a place to put your phone, which gives wireless charging in the Shine Plus trim with a couple of USB ports as well. You get a reasonably sized glove compartment here, but more interesting is this compartment here. Inside you get this, which is a holder for an iPad or other type of tablet, and then you pop this thing out and you can actually slide this on so the passenger can then watch videos on their iPad. You also get a reasonable amount of headroom in the back, although this is slightly diminished by the fact you have this kind of sloping roof which cuts it down a bit more than it could have been. The knee room is pretty good though, and Citroen makes some claims about it being the largest amount of knee room in its class, so an adult should be reasonably comfortable in the back here. It's quite a nice touch that the rear passengers get their own vents that they can operate for the air conditioning. You also get a couple of USB ports for rear charging. This one's USB-C. This is only available in the top trim level. On this trim level, you also get this central armrest with a couple of cup holders in it. You also, of course, get magazine holders for your kids to put their copy of the Daily Sport in, or whatever kids are reading these days. Parents of young children, we're pleased that there are, of course, ISOFIX points in both the outer rear seats. The boot is reasonably big, but not as big as the Peugeot E2008. It's 380 litres. You do get this extra section underneath to put your cables in, but that's 54 litres smaller than the Peugeot. Now if you remove this shelf here, you can also put these rear seats in a 60-40 arrangement forward, nice and flat. That gives you 1,250 litres, which is also small on the Peugeot, but it is a nice space. Not quite as big as an estate car, but pretty close. So you'll be able to do your weekly shop, and you could probably take quite a lot of luggage or maybe a small wardrobe in the back of there as well. The WLTP range is actually slightly better than the Peugeot E2008, which has basically the same motor and battery. It's 217 miles. That's still not as good as some of the cars that we're seeing with 250 to 300 miles, but it does mean that this car can go a bit further than just around a city. The usual CCS port is used for charging. With a standard 7 kilowatt AC supply, it takes 7.5 hours to charge from empty to full. As we said, there's an 11 kilowatt option as well. DC charging is supported up to 100 kilowatts, giving you an 80% charge in 30 minutes. Assuming WLTP range and a typical 14p per kilowatt hour electricity supply, this car is pretty cheap to run at 3.2p a mile. You also get, at the moment, when you buy a new car, an option to get a free Pod Point 7 kilowatt home charger installed, and that is a value of about £509 apparently. It's a pretty typical steering wheel. On the left you have the controls for the adaptive cruise control that you have on this particular model. On the right you have all the controls for volume and for operating your phone. And then you have the typical stalks. This one's for indicators and lights. This one is for the windscreen wipers. A really nice touch here is that you have this popping up from the front here, which is a head-up display. And on the head-up display you can see things like the speed. There's a warning of how far you are from the car in front, and a few other things like speed limit. There's a typical binnacle behind the steering wheel, but as you can see it's completely digital. You have a big readout of the speed, you have lots of detail about your battery and how much your current consumption is and current range, and a few things like whether the doors are open, parking brake, etc. So all the controls for the drive modes of the vehicle are in the central console here. So you have this rocker for selecting drive, and there's also a B mode here, which is a extra level of regenerative braking. You rock it forward for reverse, and then you press this button for park. You can select between eco, normal and sport modes with this button here. This one here is for an electronic parking brake. Pull it up to turn it on and push it down to turn it off. And then this button actually is for bringing up a display of the charging. As you can see, this car has a full suite of separate discrete controls for the air conditioning. It's also zoned, so you can set different settings for the left and right hand side of the car. You'll see it's got heated seat buttons too. All cars come with this 10-inch central display, and they also all come with satellite navigation, which again with all models gives you 3 years of live traffic and speed camera locations. It's a fairly typical sat-nav, a little bit slow in operation, but perfectly functional. You can see either side it tells you the temperatures of the two different zones. And then if you go into the car settings, you can go through these and configure the car, vehicle settings, headlights, parking, comfort, safety. Lots of other things, there's radio obviously, you can set your phone up, configure how the climate control works, and that's the central display. So while the e-C4 has range on other cars with the same drivetrain, it doesn't have performance. It takes 9 seconds to get to 62 miles per hour. Now that's not really slow, and compared to petrol cars of just a few years ago, that would be considered reasonable. However, by EV standards, it's kind of slightly on the slow side. However, you don't really notice it in everyday driving. So it's still got a decent amount of push off the line because it's an EV, plenty of immediate torque, and it's very smooth. You know, how fast do you really need to drive? Not everybody needs to drive a Tesla Performance after all. It's a very pleasant car to drive. It's not exactly a hot hatch. It's, as you can see, it deals with bumps okay, not brilliantly. It just went over a rather nasty speed bump there. It's got very light steering, which could well suit people driving around town. The handling is okay. I wouldn't say it's particularly involving. This isn't a car for people who really relish driving, but it's no hassle. With light steering and decent, if not outstanding handling, It's a car that's really much more utilitarian than one for people to really enjoy driving. That very light steering is great if you need to park, and you know, all the cars have a rear parking camera and parking sensors, which is very handy. The fact that you have this HUD right in front of you with your speed and things like distance to the car in front as well, that's going to be really useful. You don't ever have to take your eyes off the road. Because this car rides fairly high, you get a good lot of visibility, although actually out the rear view mirror it's not that great. Decent wing mirrors though, so you do get a good view of the road, and of course you have all those safety features which we'll talk about in a second. The view of your next turning in the HUD is quite graphic actually by HUD standards. It's nice, it's colourful. It's a full colour HUD as well. Now we're driving on a dual carriageway here with a 50 limit. It feels very comfortable. It also feels pretty comfortable at 70. So you can see when I put my foot down, it doesn't really pick up as fast as a lot of EVs, but it's good, it's fine. Overall, this is a comfortable utilitarian car that looks decent, and it's got plenty of space inside and in the boot. Worth noting that I put it in B mode now, but that's not really the same as single pedal driving. We should also point out that the range of 217 miles seems reasonably accurate. Obviously you never really get what the WLTP rating says in the real world, but we've been driving it for a little while. We've probably done about 20 miles. We've lost about 25 miles in terms of what it thinks we've done, so that's not too bad. As you can see as we go around corners, there is a fair bit of body roll, but I wouldn't describe it as being terrible. Certainly not floppy. And the brakes work just fine. You get a lot of safety features as standard, even with the basic e-C4, including active safety brake, speed limit information, lane keeping assist, driver attention, alert, and forward collision warning. This is a pretty decent selection. Shine and above add more sophisticated active braking, active blind spot detection, and adaptive cruise control, something we're starting to consider essential if you regularly drive in heavy traffic. Just as this car sits in the mid-range category for size, it also sits in the mid-range for price. The basic car is £30,395, which seems reasonable. However, it's worth bearing in mind that you can get the basic VW ID3 for a little bit less than that, and that has more range and is a bit faster to 60 miles an hour too. If you go up to the Shine model, that's £31,345, which starts to make a little bit more sense because only £950 more, you get a lot more for that. Then if you go up to the Shine Plus, that's £32,545. Now that is really good value. You get a load of kit in there, including leather seats. So you get a lot more value as you go up the price ranges. However, we think the Shine is probably the sweet spot because that already has adaptive cruise control, and that's a feature that we really relish in cars that have it. We don't really expect this car to outsell the VW ID3. However, it is a really good value car and you get a lot for your money. The Citroen e-C4 takes a familiar electric drivetrain and gives it an original spin, although it is outgunned on range and performance by the Volkswagen ID3. But once you add the feature packs, the value starts to shine through and it makes a lot more sense. If you can live with 217 miles of WLTP range, it's a great value electric car, and it looks pretty nice too. Oh yeah, nearly forgot. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and comment upon it, and of course subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks.